Welcome back to another episode of the Field of 68 2024 NBA Draft Prospect Profiles presented by Unified Healing. My name is Rob Dauster. I got Terrence Oglesby here with me, and today we are going to be breaking down a guy that I think it's fair to say Terrence Oglesby discovered. Okay. Kyshawn George, the 6'8" Belgian, right? Is he Belgian or French? He's Belgian.
I want to say he's Swiss, then played in
Swiss.
France.
You're right. You're Swiss. He's Swiss, played in France.
Yeah.
The 6'8" Swiss forward that played at Miami this past season, averaged 7.6 points, 3.0 boards, 2.2 assists, shot 41% from three on 4.5 threes per game in just over 20 minutes per game. He was a freshman. He is 20 years old, and he is a guy way back in September, T.O. You said, you got to keep an eye on this Kyshawn George guy. Miami's got a freshman. I'm telling you, Rob, this kid can play. Well, we saw him play, and he had flashes, and he also had moments where he looked like a freshman that was a fish out of water. What do you make of Kyshawn George and his upside as an NBA draft prospect?
He has been an efficient scorer, not only at Miami, but he was an efficient guy in Pro B France before that. And Pro B France is a better league than I think people realize, especially for guys who are transitioning from Europe to come over to play college basketball. While it's not ACC equivalent, it's mid-major college basketball. That's a fair comparison among the French players. There's going to be some really good Americans that go over there and find spots there. But as far as a translatable step up, I think that Pro B to Miami was a good step. And he's shot the ball at a really good level, even in France, even last year at Miami. He shoots a pretty ball. And there's one of my close friends in coaching told me one time, hey, when a pro walks in the gym, you know right away. Their body, their lean, their wingspan, their length, how they run, how they move. He checks all those boxes. He really shoots a pretty ball, and he's going to translate into a really good shooter at the NBA level. I think once he gets more comfortable, I think it took him some adjustment process. There was some adjustment whenever he got to Miami, whenever he got to the different style of play in college, which is much more athleticism and force than it is skill and shooting. I think he's going to do much better at the NBA level eventually than he did in college, especially from a volume perspective. I'm a Kyshawn George fan. I think he's going to be a good NBA player. It's going to take him a little while to adjust from a physicality perspective because, like I said, he is tall. He does have broad shoulders. He needs to get big and needs to mature a little bit. And if he's able to do that, he can bring a lot of value as a shooter from beyond the arc because that is one of the smoother shooting strokes in this draft class.
Yeah, I think if you look at his profile, right, a 6'8" guy that shoots it the way that he shoots it, that also has some on-ball skill, that also has proven to be an above average, at least facilitator, right? I think that there is a lot of reason to be excited about what he could be long term, right?
Yes,
Like
I think this is a potential overproduction selection with a much more clear visual of what he can be. We've talked about some other prospects throughout these draft cycles or whatever, who, it's going to take 3, 4, 5 years. I think he can provide some immediate value with his shooting and floor spacing, while you're also going to be able to see him incrementally develop the rest of his game on the fly because he's able to bring some of that value with his jump shooting.
Yes. And the idea of having a positionally versatile 6'8" guy that can initiate offense when you need him to, that can be a shot creator for other people while also spacing the floor. Like those guys are incredibly incredibly valuable at the NBA level right now. Now what I would say is that he has all of these different skill sets right now. Like he has this shooting, he has this passing ability, he has kind of this ball handling ability, but it has not all come together as a player yet, right?
It's not everything all at once.
Yes, like he's a guy that has a whole bunch of different skills that project really, really well for the next level. But whether it's so here that we can get into some of the weaknesses for him, I would say that at 205 pounds, like he is not strong enough yet to be able to get where he needs to get to and play the way that he wants to play, because he's more of a fluid athlete than he is an explosive athlete, right? Like,
That is a really good
yeah.
way to put that. But what I'll say to kind of counter that point is look at what the Timberwolves are doing right now defensively.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what the Orlando Magic are doing right now defensively. They're putting the biggest dudes out there, and while they might not be the most explosive guys sometimes, there's length at every spot. They can switch pretty much everywhere except for the 5 spot. Like he is tailor-made for one of those two teams, like, because he's going to be able to bring some floor spacing. I think the negatives for him, you're still looking at potential overproduction. I think that's a negative. I look at that as a negative because you don't really know, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one. Volume has never been there. And quite frankly, I don't know that it ever will be there, because he's much more of a let the game come to me. I'm going to let the game happen. And whatever happens, I'm going to make the right play accordingly. My biggest concern is I watched the games sometimes this season, and he had Nigel Pack, he had Wooga Poplar, he had some of these other guys on the team. There were times where he could look aloof or a little bit too cool. And like in the NBA, that's a cool league, but those dudes are cool because they're getting 70, especially in today's game. That, like, you can't have that type of attitude just because you don't feel a certain way on a given night.
Yeah.
You got to bring it every single night. And there lapses of concentration, and sometimes still has some young habits defensively to where it's just like, oh, hell, somebody will get it. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like some of these young mistakes, he's going to be able to fight through because all the ability is there. Every time I watch him,
the way I would phrase that real quick, what I would phrase that is that there are some times that European prospects get like kind
they're
of
okay with making the right decision.
yes, and they're a
Even if
little
the
bit,
right
they
decision
can be a
doesn't
little
put
bit
them
passive, right? There's a level of passivity, I think, which I don't think is necessarily fair all the time, but I think that you see that pop up with does that make
well,
sense?
they assume the ball's going to find them.
Yes.
They assume the ball's going to find them. And sometimes when the ball doesn't find them, which is very likely in the NBA game, sometimes when the ball doesn't find them, it can affect the other end of the floor. And I think it happens sometimes with George this year. Everything that you want, the length, the athleticism, the ability to score, shoot, put it on the deck a little bit, all those skills are there. I do worry about the lapses and I do worry about the lapses in concentration. He is going to take some time to develop, just if nothing else, the urgency. But this is a guy, I'm not sure where he's projected, but if it were me and
Late
I
first.
were, that's perfect. That's perfect, because that tells me that guys, they already have pieces in place. Don't be shocked if the Magic go here, because that team needs more shooting. They love length around the perimeter. See who they drafted the last couple of years: Anthony Black, Jalen Suggs. Jalen Suggs is a menace defensively, and the rest of them are big, long athletes. Wagner, all those guys. That is one to keep an eye on for him, because he is a guy that the potential's there. They need floor spacing. His shot's going to translate. He's going to continue to shoot the ball well, and he fits very much into their scheme and what they would be wanting to do defensively. Keep an eye out there. I'm not sure where they pick, but keep an eye out for the Orlando Magic and Kyshawn George. That would make a lot of sense.
All right. Let's get into NBA comparisons here, because I have two that I
Go
have
ahead.
written down. And I don't know if you're going to agree with them. The first one, where I think what could be like the ideal role for him long term, would be Joe Ingles, a guy that is like bigger,
Magic. Yeah.
that can pass it a little bit, that can shoot it, that you can kind of play in multiple different roles, right? I think that is what I think, if you're drafting for a best case scenario, what he could be. The other one I have written down, it's not necessarily the skill set, like the perfect skill set match, but it's more how I could see him fitting into a team. You mentioned the Minnesota Timberwolves. I could see like a Kyle Anderson kind of an impact, where instead of being the
He's
elite
so much
passer,
more athletic.
well, instead of being the elite passer that is a capable shooter, I think Kyshawn George is more of the elite shooter that is a capable playmaker. But I think that it's something similar to that. Whether you are a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. After a 6-month season loaded with cross-country travel, I can promise you that proper recovery is a priority for me these days. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring this episode of the Field of 68. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or the EE system. If you haven't heard of the EE system yet, you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. Whether you're here in New Jersey or at one of the hundreds of other locations across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. If you're interested in experiencing the EE system technology for yourself, go to unifiedhealing.com/unified68 to learn more and find a center near you. That's UNIFYD healing.com/UNIFYD, the number 6, the number 8. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, including the EE system.
I had one. I think he's going to be a better shooter, but Nicholas Batum, 6'9", is going to be able to guard, long, good athlete, not a great one, but broad shoulders and can guard a lot of different positions. I think he's going to be a better shooter. And I went back and looked at a lot of Batum's stats throughout the course of the year. At most, he was averaging 14 points a game, 14.7, I think. That's at most. I don't think Kyshawn George is ever going to be like this 20-point-a-game guy.
No.
I do think he'll have a season or two where he's in that 12, 13-point range, and he's going to be a ball mover and defender. And in the modern NBA, big guys who can shoot the basketball and defend, there's a lot of value there. It is going to take him a little bit of time, but I'm a big fan. And that's best case scenario, because I have a lot of respect for Batum's game, because he's come up big in big moments. And he's been able to guard a lot of different positions. I think Kyshawn George can eventually get there. Not the defender that Batum is right now, but a lot of the same tools. I do think he's a better shooter. And big skill certainly helps. And I think he qualifies there, just because there's been a lot of talk of how the Timberwolves have been operating. They're huge across the entire floor outside of Mike Conley. You look at the Orlando Magic and their makeup; they're huge across the entire floor without Markelle Fultz. He fits that mold, and that's why I think like he provides a lot of value for a long time. Worst case scenario, he's going to end up back in Paris playing in the EuroLeague, and I don't see that happening. But this guy has loads of talent, loads of potential. I don't think he ever develops into an all-star, but I think he develops into a really good player for a really long time.
Yeah, I literally had the exact same thing written down. He's Swiss. He has a European passport, and there's a very real chance that if all of these pieces don't come together the way that we hope that they come together, that he ends up being more valuable to a EuroLeague team, where you can make, 2 commas with a crooked number in front over there, and there's a chance that he can end up being
not that much money over there anymore. Go ahead.
Well, no,
yeah, I hear what you're saying.
When you don't have to pay the taxes on it, becomes
tax implications are obviously a thing.
You don't have to become more valuable to a EuroLeague team than you would to an NBA team. Is all the point that I was making. So I don't think that ends up happening. I think he's a good role player in the NBA for a long time. But listen, T.O., it's been a pleasure, man. Make sure you guys stick to the Field of 68. We are going to have about 30 or 40 of these NBA draft prospect profiles coming out, and we will be having a live mock draft where we will be joined by 6 NBA draft experts and be doing a live run through of the entire first round of the NBA draft. So until then, stick to the Field of 68. Terrence Oglesby, always a pleasure.